If you've been listening to the narrative from the mainstream media, you might think that the Ron Paul campaign is completely done for and out of the race, but they have made it clear that they are not suspending their campaign and that Ron Paul intends to run all the way to the convention. Yet despite statements from the campaign over the last few days, including from Jesse Benton on Sunday and Tuesday and Wednesday, as well as a message from Dr. Paul himself on Monday, the grassroots of the liberty movement, of the Lovolution that has supported Ron Paul throughout his campaign, remains as committed as ever to the cause. And there may be some confusion on the matter here, because it seems that Jesse Benton, in his various statements, has conceded the race to Mitt Romney, specifically in his statement from the 15th. As he said, "Looking ahead, our campaign must honor that trust, the trust that the movement has placed in them with the resources that we have donated, by maximizing our resources to ensure the greatest possible impact at the National Convention. So while our campaign is no longer investing in the remaining primary states, we will continue to run strong programs at district and state conventions to win more delegates and alternate delegates to the National Convention. To this end, our campaign has several positive and realistic goals. Having recently won Maine, we believe we can win several more states. We will win party leadership positions at both the state and national levels. And we will continue to grow our already substantial total of delegates. We will head to Tampa with a solid group of delegates. Several hundred will be bound to Dr. Paul, and several hundred more, although bound to Governor Romney or other candidates, will be Ron Paul supporters. These are the stealth delegates, those who are allegedly bound by state party rules to vote a certain way based on either the caucuses or primaries within those states. Unfortunately, barring something very unforeseen, our delegate total will not be strong enough to win the nomination. Governor Romney is now within 200 delegates of securing the party's nod. However, our delegates can still make a major impact at the National Convention and beyond." Jesse Benton, the campaign manager for Ron Paul 2012, and now self-titled, retitled as the chief strategist, has been a leech on the movement and a leech on Ron Paul since he first married his granddaughter while cheating on the woman that he was living with at the time. Through all of the inappropriate compensation that he has received through the various entities within Ron Paul Inc., from the campaign itself, from the Liberty PAC, from Campaign for Liberty, it's clear that he is not in it for the cause. He doesn't care about the movement. He only is in this for himself. And we've seen this demonstrated over and over again in his repeated attempts to block the grassroots from doing things that would actually support Ron Paul, and in his incompetence in handling the campaign. Most notably, his directives, or rather consent to the RNC to violate Rule 11 of the RNC bylaws. And Rule 11 states basically that the party can't get behind a candidate in a contested primary until the primary is over, or until the candidate is running unopposed. Clearly, with Ron Paul still in the race, that is not the case. But the RNC had the courtesy in this case of respecting the spirit of the rule and contacted the Ron Paul campaign, specifically Jesse Benton, for permission to create a joint fundraising committee and merge other organizational entities with the Mitt Romney campaign. That happened this Sunday, which I took to be a concession of the race from Jesse Benton, unfortunately not in Ron's name directly, but we have evidence of Jesse Benton having done, and others within the campaign having done a number of things contrary to Ron's will in ways that have embarrassed him and his family. So it would be quite shocking if Ron Paul himself was actually behind all of the various poor communications, to put it mildly, from Jesse Benton over the last few days. "We are in an excellent position to make sure the Republican Party adds solid liberty issues to the GOP platform, which our delegates will be directly positioned to approve. Our campaign is presently working to get several items up for consideration, including monetary policy reform, prohibitions on indefinite detention, and internet freedom. Finally, by sending a large, respectful, and professional delegation to Tampa, we will show the party and the country that not only is our movement growing and here to stay, but that the future belongs to us." Well, he's right about that last part, but there are two problems with this. One, nobody will support Ron Paul 2012 campaign to reform the Republican Party, to change the platform, to change the rules, because we know, we're not stupid, we know that those are meaningless concessions. We know that the party platform doesn't bind anybody to doing anything whatsoever, and that the rules are repeatedly broken by the establishment within the Republican Party and really only serve as a general guideline for how the party should be conducted, whereas the real authority rests in the Central Committee and with the majority of delegates to the National Convention. So let's put this in stark terms here. What is the threat that Ron Paul represents to the establishment? Well, they want the RNC to be a nice 4-day infomercial for the party and Mitt Romney to kick off his general election campaign and get him that fabled convention bump, a couple points in the polls to make the American people see what a great guy he is and how he's going to be our next president, our commander-in-chief. And the threat of Ron Paul and the Ron Paul delegates coming into the RNC, really, there are only two threats here, because it's winner take all. It's majority vote. There are no concessions for proportional representation. There's no directly positioned to approve rule changes bullshit. Nobody cares. Sorry, Jesse. Nobody gives a shit about your negotiations with the Republican Party establishment. Nobody cares that you're able to placate the Ron Paul grassroots in order to smooth this out for the establishment and make sure that Romney gets his infomercial. No, because the only other option other than having that 51% majority at the convention is to disrupt, is to be a presence, is to be a thorn in their side, is to show that dissent within the party, to show the world that the Republican Party is not a uniform monolith getting behind Mitt Romney. But here's the really interesting part. Rule 38, as outlined by Ben Swan of WXIX Cincinnati, a Fox affiliate, is the one that says that party delegates or delegates to the National Convention are not bound by any state laws or any state rules. In fact, it's illegal to do that illegal against the national rules for a state to bind a delegate to the convention to vote for a specific candidate. And ironically, this rule was invoked in 2008 by a delegate from Nevada who was bound to vote for McCain, but successfully asserted his right to instead cast a vote for Mitt Romney. And it was RNC lawyers that backed up his interpretations of the rules and allowed him to cast his ballot in the first round of voting for Mitt Romney. Which means that going into the convention this year, it doesn't matter who delegates are bound to vote for. If the RNC holds an honest vote in that first round of voting, all of the delegates will be allowed to vote their conscience. So, what does this mean moving forward? Well, first, we should do exactly what the campaign suggests. If you are in a state where delegates have not yet been selected for the RNC, keep going, keep fighting, get elected, and get nominated, and get on the slate of delegates from your state to go to the RNC. Now, this might end up in a bit of a tricky position for the delegate slate from Oklahoma, where the party in Oklahoma was confronted by a majority of Ron Paul supporters at their state convention and decided to break the rules, declare the convention closed early without having followed their own bylaws or elected a proper slate of delegates to the convention. The Ron Paul supporters there then reconvened the convention in the parking lot and completed the process properly, legally, and created a slate of delegates that is now in the hands of the RNC, who has yet to approve them or issue credentials. So it may be that a disenfranchised group of Ron Paul supporters will not be following Jesse Benton's orders to be polite and respectful, having had their votes disenfranchised. They might be showing up at the RNC demanding to be let in as the proper delegation to be seated representing the state of Oklahoma, not the one by the shell of the establishment that was not a majority at the Oklahoma State Convention, but seems to have railroaded through their slate of delegates anyways. So, that being said, they are not the only voters or would-be delegates supporting Ron Paul who have been disenfranchised from this process, and it's been extremely disappointing to see that the official campaign, Jesse Benton, John Tate, have failed to contest this with the Republican Party. We didn't come here to play nice. Ron Paul's message is not about kissing ass to the establishment. It's not about being nice to the fascists. It's not about being respectful to a freedom-hating douchebag like Mitt motherfucking Romney. This is about liberty. This is about standing up for our rights and asserting our rights and making sure that we are able to create a free world for our children, not one in which the totalitarian policies of Barack Obama will be continued by someone with an R next to their name. Now, here's the important opportunity here, and here's how we can get Ron Paul the nomination still.